be charming.
Okay, yeah, that's part of the discussion as well, right? So as we think about strategic planning, we want to think about, how do you want your city to be, right?
A lot better.
If downtown vibrancy is one of them, we'll have that, after that feedback as well, we'll go right into.
I noticed on, I don't remember the name of it, it's Fifth Street, little place to eat, or there's a couple of little. Yeah, I like that little development that's starting to occur.
Yeah.
And I wish we could get more of that, or else have a nice little sign that starts taking us to something that doesn't have anything to do with this, or something.
Well, that's good. So we'll, our timer running down, so we'll get started. All right, we'll see who else joins us. Awesome. You all get a special presentation. Just for you. How many people came yesterday?
What, about 20 last night?
Yeah, so there was about 10 online and 10 in person, including the council members. Thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. This just shows me that you all are very engaged individuals. So, we're here for a community forum for the city of Apopka, looking to establish its strategic plan for the next 5 years. And I'll describe what that strategic plan is and what it intends to do. But before we get started, I wanted to get going with some introductions. So my name is Charlene Petithomme. I'm a manager with Barry Dunn, and we are the firm that the city has retained for this process. So we'll be conducting some stakeholder engagement as well as conducting the plan development sessions to help develop the strategic plan. My colleague Karen, she's not able to be here with us, but she's also a facilitator for this process, and she's been doing interviews with elected officials as well as some of the city stakeholders. And then Seth Hedstrom, he is our project principal, really to help make sure that we have all the resources that we need for this project. And I also have some of my colleagues. Lisa will be helping as well throughout the session later in the day, and then Susan is here to help me for this session. So really happy to be here. So before we get started, I always like to kind of put some guidelines for effective communication, right? So we all come from different walks of life. Let's just all be respectful of everyone's viewpoints. When you're speaking from your own perspectives, just using I statements as those reflects your own thoughts. Staying focused at the discussion at hand. So we have a prompt that we'll present to you for your discussion, and we really want to make sure that we're having discussion specific to that prompt. And then asking questions, right? So we're going to be sharing some information that may be new to you or maybe things that you may know. We welcome you to ask questions as well during the presentation. So before we get started, what even is a strategic plan? So this is looking at what the city will focus on, right? So it's looking at what are some of our strategic focus areas, what are some of the areas that we really want to make sure that we're focusing our resources on. It's also a living document, so this is intended to help guide decision making as far as city services, programmings, and even the budget, right? To really make sure that the budget is aligned to the strategic plan. In addition to that, it's also a tool for transparency, right? So you all let us know what you want from a community perspective, and ideally that is implemented into the plan so that you all can hold your government accountable. So the strategic plan is looking at the what, right? And then when we think about the how, that's going to come a little bit later when we develop the implementation plan with the city team. So why do communities do strategic planning? So it's helping you plan for the future, right? You all are in a very unique position where you're experiencing a lot of growth. And what does that mean for you all as you're planning for infrastructure, for example? This is helping you all identify what are some of those key goals and priorities to allocate your resources effectively. But most importantly, it's maintaining focus at the issues that are most important to you all as the community members. So this house graphic, we like to show this just so you all can kind of visualize how everything fits together from a strategic planning perspective. So your vision statement is really kind of that aspirational statement, right? 5 years down the line, what do you want the city to be known for? How do you want the city to feel, or how do you want to feel as a community member living in the community? And then the mission statement is really your purpose, right? Why does the city exist? What's the reason of being for the city? And I will say for a lot of local government agencies and municipalities, your mission statement is very similar just because of the mandated services that you are intended to provide. And then typically, most clients will have about 4 to 6 strategic priorities. Those are the key areas that you're focusing on, right? So, an example could be public safety or maybe infrastructure planning. And then under that, you would have a goal statement that essentially defines what do we mean by public safety for the city of Apopka. And then the objectives are some of the more specific action items that you'll take to essentially move you closer to achieving each of those strategic priorities. Most importantly, too, we want to make sure that we're developing outcomes, right? So that we're actually measuring progress and we know how do we know that we're successful if we accomplish this strategic priority. And then underpinning all that, you have your core values and guiding principles. So this is how you should expect staff members to engage with you and also engage in implementing the strategic plan. So, how do we inform our process, right? We want to make sure that we're getting feedback from various sources, one qualitative and quantitative data. So, we look at community input like today, right? These forums are also an important way for us to gather feedback from the community. We've been doing some interviews as well with stakeholders, including city staff, but also other community members. And then, who here has heard of Social Pinpoint? This is telling. So, this is something that we'll share with you at the end. It's our community engagement tool that we're using for the survey online.
Was it the sticky note board online?
Yes, and that too. Perfect. So we know someone has heard of that. That's good. So we really welcome you to share this with your neighbors, friends, because we want to make sure that we're hearing from as many voices as possible as part of this process. And then we look at some demographic and economic data. So you'll see that today as part of our environmental scan. And then also looking at the city budget, of course, just to see how the city is already allocating its funds as well as its policy documents, which could be, for example, the comprehensive plan and get land use planning. So before we get started, I always like to ask this question just to kind of hear how you all would describe your city. And also one thing to keep in mind when we develop the mission statement, we want to make sure that it's really tailored to your community. So some of these words may ultimately make it to the mission statement. So this is an open discussion. Which words best describe the city for you?
In what direction are you going?
So as a community member living in the city, how if I was to ask you, what's the city of Apopka like? Well, how would you answer that?
Do you want us to answer them?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think when I think of Apopka as it is, a word that comes to mind is Cimarron because I live on one side of Cimarron. Cimarron cuts through downtown, and a lot of interesting things in Apopka are on the other side.
Okay.
But I think as the city as I want it to be is kind of more leaning into that like Fern City, like foliage capital
Okay.
thing. Like yeah, like when I think of what I want to Apopka to be, it would be like oh, a place for community, a ton of greenery. Yeah.
Okay. So the comment for those who are online relates to Apopka being a green community. Okay.
I would be much happier. I love Apopka, but we are growing exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I would assume, besides infrastructure, that we need to update our town.
Okay.
And every time I drive, I try to avoid downtown because it's very uncomfortable to watch all the um, types of car repairs,
Mm.
well, that type of stuff. And I've been waiting all these, not all of these years, but these years that I've lived here for updating to occur. Like they have trees down the center of a lot of places where they've cut out the sidewalk and put trees underneath or something on that order. And if the buildings were painted, like maybe different colors to make the charm, or visit Winter Garden, visit downtown Winter Park.
Mm-hmm.
It produces charm, and whatever produces charm makes you want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Fifth Street, I just saw last week, where something is going on. I don't know what's going on, but something positive is going on. And I would like to see, maybe off of Main Street, something to make people want to come here.
Okay.
And having a Saturday, thing that they have on Lake Eola or something like that. We don't have a lot of charm here. We have almost zero charm, and it hurts because we have a nice town,
Mhm.
and it's been going on for decades. So if this 5-year plan would include updating Main Street and starting some charm on another street, that would be awesome.
Thank you. Any other thoughts back there? Do you want to contribute?
My name is Antoinette Bullock. I'm the Economic Development Director for the city.
Okay.
This is my second week.
Oh, welcome.
This is my second week here, so I'm really just listening
Okay.
and gathering information, same as you, to learn a little bit more, not only about the city, but also what are expectations.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. All right, so we're going to keep moving. So we'll put that on the pin for now, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the future state after our environmental scan. So this community profile is intended to help you just to gather some more context as to what's going on in the Apopka, right? So we're going to be sharing some demographic data. And as we're going through these slides, start thinking a little bit more from a perspective of if I was to do a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges analysis, where does Apopka sit in, right? So as we're going through this data point, that's kind of the perspective I want you to look at this from. So, from a demographic standpoint, as a population, you currently sit at 60,000. This reflects actually a 10% growth in just 4 years from 2020, right? So, to your point, you all are growing exponentially. And, what does that mean for infrastructure planning? What does that mean for housing or the services that you are providing to your residents, right? But also, as you're growing, you may want to think about how do we plan intentionally, right? Managing our growth so that we are also keeping and maintaining the charm or maybe the character of your city. From an age perspective, you are a very young population. So really, 38 is the median age here, really suggesting kind of a balanced community with both young families, but also older adults. And this type of balance can also have some implication as far as programming, services, and amenities that the city may look to, consider improving. And then the average household size is 3. This is higher than in many urban areas, I would say, and really points to more of that family-oriented housing needs and maybe recreational opportunities. And then from a household or home ownership rate, you do see that there is a strong home ownership rate. Really, this could have also a strong impact on stability in your community overall, school enrollment, as well as the housing market strategies. And then as we look at the population distribution, so when we ask the question about which is the first word that comes to mind when you think of Apopka, someone said diversity. And this is also reflected here within your population distribution. And for this, right, you may want to think about how do we celebrate our strengths as a community, right? Put out maybe multicultural events that looks to target all members of your community. And then the age segmentation. So we saw 38 is your median age. So this is kind of looking to get into identifying kind of where all those members sit into from an age perspective, right? So you see the largest cohort is really that 20 to 44, right? So you may think about how do we keep these people here, but how do we also engage this large group of people, right? Because as people are, getting younger and younger within your community, we may need to think about different strategies to engage them as well in terms of city government. And then so 65 and over, right? So that's not a large population, but you may want to start thinking about, making sure that people can age in place, right? From a housing perspective, do they have that ability to house age in place as well? So just to provide more context, we looked at your neighbors. So we looked at City of Sanford, City of Winter Garden, just so you can see how you all stack up against them. And really the goal here is just to give some more context, right? So as you can see from a median age, you're very similar in demographics. Both Winter Garden and Apopka, you all have pretty similar home ownership rates as well. I will note we will be posting the final environmental scan on our website as well, so you will have access to everything for anyone that's interested. But then from a median household income, you're pretty close to, I would say, closer to Winter Garden. This number is actually a little bit higher now than it was. This data comes from the 2020 census, and that number has actually increased quite a bit. I think you're currently sitting at 90,000 right now. So then from a growth comparison, right, there's a lot of discussion about growth, and kind of what we see here is that you are growing. I will say Winter Garden is growing slightly faster than you all. So the compound annual rate, that's just looking at the average annual rate year over year over a specific time period. You're growing at a rate about 3%. But then you can also see that your housing units have largely kept up with the pace of growth from a population perspective. On the other hand, I will say Winter Garden is experiencing a slightly faster growth, right? So key takeaways here is that this growth, Apopka's growth is a little bit faster than Sanford, but it's not as intense as Winter Garden. So it gives you a little bit more of some breathing room as you start thinking about planning for infrastructure and housing needs as well within your community. So then from an education standpoint, we tend to look at data as far as, high school diploma, college and high school graduation rates as well. This is really helpful to start thinking about and planning for maybe workforce development for the members of your community. You will see here that you have the highest percentage of people that have no high school diploma as compared to the city of Sanford and Winter Garden. So the demographics average, I always like to put this up here because as we're thinking about strategic planning, we should consider the average population, right? Which typically would include people with disabilities, older adults, households without a vehicle, because it really speaks to access, right? How do we make sure that people have access to get the amenities or the services that they would need? I think a key takeaway here on this slide is the number of people who speak other languages. So, right, in looking at your demographics, this will likely continue to increase, and the city may need to consider how do we improve service delivery to reach this population, perhaps? And then some more on the income. So again, comparing Apopka with Sanford and Winter Garden, here what we see is there is that economic diversity, right, in terms of overall income level. It looks about 19% of your residents are making about 74,000, which is kind of higher than the national average. So I would think that's something for you all to celebrate as a strength overall. But from what you can see with Winter Garden, they tend to be a more affluent community overall. So here we explore housing, right? This is a hot topic, especially when we talk about balancing growth and managing growth. So how do we really plan for affordable housing while not overdeveloping, right? And one key takeaway here from this slide is about 30% of your residents spend 50% or more on housing. So that includes rent, that would include utilities, and really everything that comes into having a place to live. And this is higher than your neighbor, right? So indicating that most people within the Apopka community are house burdened. A general rule of thumb when you're thinking about income and how you're spending that as a relation to your rent, it's about 30% of your income should be spent on housing. And at the mortgage to income ratio, this is looking at, about 15 to 19% of your residents spend, or excuse me, more of your residents spend about 15 to 19% of their income on their mortgage. So from a transportation standpoint, this really speaks to how do people get around the city, right, to get to their services and so forth, grocery stores or maybe activities. As you can see for Apopka and both cities being benchmarked, this is just a car-dependent area, and that's probably no surprise to you all. That's kind of what this slide really speaks to. So this is a livability index. It actually comes from the AARP. They have this index that is intended to essentially compare communities of similar size, of similar services as well, just to think about some factors that may improve livability, right? So as you're thinking about how livable a community is, you may be thinking about how affordable is the housing. You may be thinking about the transportation, right? How convenient things are to each other, or the neighborhood. How safe is it? From a community standpoint, you have an overall score of 53. I will say no community has a perfect score of 100. So you are at the top half of communities, but there's always room for improvement, right? So as you're looking at those numbers or those factors, how can we maybe get housing to a higher number, for example, or maybe health, right? So that speaks to prevention, access, and quality of health as well. So with that, we're going to start sharing a little bit more about some of the community input today, and I'll have Susan come up and she'll share some of the initial survey data that we have received.
Thank you, Charlene, and welcome again. We're so glad you joined us this morning. So we are going to review from the social pinpoint. We did a survey, and we are hoping that we will have additional responses to it. So we're going to keep it open. I think you said through the end of September. So please, again, tell your family, friends to go online and fill out the survey because it really helps with the statistics. But as of right now, we have 75 responses, and we're going to review what that feedback is directly from the citizens. So the first survey question was, select the top 5 aspects you think Apopka should prioritize in its next strategic plan. And we normally highlight the first 5. So the number 1 prioritization is growth management, which is fantastic. The second is roadway maintenance and infrastructure. The third is city beautification. If you notice, you guys have already done this up on the board for us, so you're right in line with the feedback we are receiving. Parks and outdoor spaces. And the 5th is water and wastewater infrastructure. And I see your heads nodding. So it seems like you're in agreement there as well. Very good. And we can go down the list. We don't highlight it again, but you have this information and these slides are available to you online. But it follows up with preserving natural resources and police and fire services and sense of community and transportation, etc. So they're all rated there for you to review. The second question that we sent was, what are some things that the government does well? And the number 1 was civic spaces, amphitheaters, community centers, athletic fields, etc. The second was parks and open spaces. The third, recreational programs and activities. The 4th was emergency preparedness and response. And the 5th was engagement with communities and residents. So that's really positive that we're getting that type of feedback. Again, it goes down through customer service and responsiveness and affordable housing and road maintenance, economic development, etc. It's all there. It's just a matter of what you think the government is doing very, very well on your behalf. Moving forward, what are some things that the city could do better? And your number 1 was city beautification, road maintenance, economic development, water and sewer infrastructure, and stormwater and drainage infrastructure. So all of these are highlighted and for your review. Again, it goes down to parks and open spaces, affordable housing, recreational programs and activities, public transit. So all of that is documented on your behalf, but we'd love to have additional responses. The next one, what do you foresee as Apopka's biggest challenges over the next 5 years? And 80% said growth maintenance. And we already heard you say growth, it's up on our board. So that's obviously falling in line with your thinking as well. Traffic congestion, recruiting and retaining new businesses, community appearance, and preserving green space and natural resources. So all of this is falling in line and becoming a trend. It also goes down through cost of living, water quality, crime, housing affordability, mental health, emergency preparedness, etc. Finally, we asked on a scale of 1 to 5, being most confident and 1 being least confident, how confident are you that Apopka will be even better place to live 5 years from now? And these were the results. So number 3 is right in the middle at 33%. And then 2 is at 24%. 4 and 1 are at 19%. And finally 5 was at 5%. So these are the results from the Social Pinpoint Survey. And it's still open. So if you want to, again, share with your neighbors and friends and fill it out yourself, please do so.
So now that we're getting to the end of our environmental scan, we always want to kind of share, hear you all kind of speak a little bit about what surprised you from the data that we shared, right? Was there anything that maybe stood out to you? Is there anything that kind of resonated with you, right? Because we saw some people nodding, and we want to hear that as well, just as we kind of get your perspectives on the environmental scan. What shocked you? Or maybe from a demographics perspective, what was surprising to you?
You mean as far as people are concerned or as far as the data?
Both.
I was surprising. It used to be 25% of our housing, 25% income, what am I trying to say? It used to be instead of 50% of the salary going to housing, used to be 25%. And if you did 30%, it was in danger when you went for a mortgage or something. Now, I don't understand why 50% is starting to be acceptable. And I understand a lot of the reasons why, but where is the housing that provides the 30% or the 40% of the ability of them being able to handle living here? That part. And I think the demographics, as far as the people are concerned, they're making percentage points as to what is important. I think infrastructure is getting to be exceptionally serious because you can't get out of your neighborhoods in some areas. They need stoplights or four-way stops or more of something, roundabouts.
Thank you. That's a good point too, right? Because as we think about infrastructure, that can be costly, right? So how do we start planning for that over time? Do you have anything? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'd just kind of like to one up the 50% income because that is what I spend on my rent. Is I did the math literally last month and it's like, oh yep, half of my money goes to rent and the other half I live off. So yeah, I really feel that a lot. And I love the suggestion of like things like roundabouts in neighborhoods or something, things that keep the traffic flowing, but still allow ease of access and ease of entry. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, right? Because it really speaks to the cost of living and how high it's becoming to live or to afford a high, good livability.
I had another question.
Yes.
They can hear me, I think.
So
Another,
we have people online. I don't think they can hear you.
oh, I forgot what I was just gonna say. Said before he does that to you. I'll get back.
All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a small group discussion. Since there's three of you, we'll probably kind of have you all stay in one group. If you don't, you could probably also take that table over there for your discussion. Before we go into the small group, your prompt is, what do you want the city to be known for in the next 5 years? So what I'm going to have you do when you get to your small group, introduce yourself to your neighbor, select the scribe. So the scribe is going to essentially be reporting out to us so we can hear what you all discussed. And then you want to start, brainstorming this question individually first, right? Think a little bit more about this prompt and then share with your group. Once you share with your group, we're going to bring you all some sticky notes. And what you'll do is essentially provide your idea on the sticky note, right? So you want to write around 3 to 5 words. For example, if your idea is infrastructure improvement, you will write that here, and then we'll essentially bring it up for discussion once we kind of see where you all are at. How does 20 minutes sound for your small group? And we'll check in on you throughout that time as well. All right, off you go. getting close to wrapping up here, so I wanted to kind of hear your top 5 ideas. I know you all came up with 7, so let's try to prioritize a little bit, right? And talk about the top 5. And if you want to give it to me in order of priority, that's fine too.
Okay, right now we got 7, so we gotta take it down to 5. Okay, so if we say management growth, development fees can go with that. And we have leadership change, infrastructure, accommodations developed, manager growth, that's 5. We have coordination with county boarding and communication, which those 2 can really tie together.
Just communication.
Yeah, make a communication, but hit the other points.
Okay. So
Could it be maybe communication and collaboration, right, to capture those 2?
yeah.
Okay.
I got 5 then, okay.
Okay, so far we have managed growth, communication, and collaboration. What's your 3rd?
Okay, manage growth, leadership change.
Okay.
That's number 1 probably. We'll number them here in a moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Infrastructure.
Is this like planning for infrastructure, or what do you mean by infrastructure?
Infrastructure is everything, has to do with the aspect of making sure that we are in position for the growth.
Okay.
We got issues with water and sewer. We've got current households water pressure for reclaimed water is supposed, my sprinkler's supposed to go 15 to 20 feet, or going 3 to 4 feet. Meanwhile, you got new developments, water in broad daylight. We're fine if we water on non-watering days unless we have new sod put in.
They said no, they didn't like that either.
Oh, no, new sod, but I volunteer with the police department, and fire department, but with the police department, I drive a squad. And when we're under those water restrictions, all these new developments laying new sod watering every time, in broad daylight. I mean, it's unbelievable.
So it sounds like infrastructure planning to manage the growth.
And the aspect of the street, so if that infrastructure fits, having the staff, 30% of our water systems equipment is past their normal lifespan.
And they sent out a
It's
paper
past their
on
normal
that.
lifetime, and that's why we got a rate increase last year, that's why we got one this year, because we were ahead of the curve. Again, development fees would help get the infrastructure in place, so infrastructure is a big one.
Are you okay with me clustering it under the managed growth category? Does that speak to managed growth, or do you see that as a separate?
It kind of does.
It does, put a slash infrastructure, that way there won't be a question on it, I think.
Now, to me, these are only words unless, and it won't be possible, but unless we have bullets underneath
Yep.
as to the categories.
Exactly. So when we put this up front to the city council, we'll start to actually think about some of those objectives, right? So more specific actions for these priorities. That's going to be in October. Yeah.
Now,
And we'll have the date on the Social Pinpoint website as well once it's updated, so you can see that.
Can you have them schedule it for a reasonable time?
Yeah, we can look into scheduling that meeting for a reasonable time so that you all can attend. I will note that it's usually a work session, so you can, attend and observe the meeting, and then there will be another meeting where you all can actually do comments on the plan as well.
Okay, so the work session would not include public comments?
Usually no, but then when we have the meeting to review the plan, you can make comments on that plan for anything that we missed that you may want us to reconsider.
Now, are you going to do bullets on this?
Yes, we are. Yep, the way the strategic plan will be structured is, so if you see, for example, managed growth, that might be a strategic priority area, right? And then under that, we have more specific objectives that then speaks to how are we going to make sure that we're managing growth? Is it infrastructure planning, right? Like, is it looking at the development fee? What does that look like? So So all those ideas will be brought up to the council meeting as well.
Our, when I was about 30, I went to Sunday school class with one of my friends who had all the bigwigs around that were in that Sunday school class, and they were talking about water infrastructure. And the one guy that was in charge of that, he said, we are 17 feet below the water line on underground waterways. And he says this is going to become a serious thing. So recently I learned that we were having water restrictions, and I wanted to know how much water I'm using. So I got to this guy who was really sharp, but he told me that they have found new reservoirs. Well, how many people are we coming into Florida that's going to learn this too? Look at Colorado. This is becoming very serious. It was serious back then.
Yeah, it was serious when you were 30, and now it's like dead triangle, and like it was 115 degrees. Like, that's not normal. And because we ignored the problem until we got to the point where people are dying from heat stroke.
I was doing some reading, and they say when the water level gets so low, the salt water comes in, and there's this area that kind of combines the two. The fresh water is up here, but how low are we that are we getting to that table?
Especially since that, like, they started talking about it at 30 degrees, or going to 30, like that.
45 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't think I was 30. Seriously.
Okay, so we have 3. Did you want to add something else?
The accommodations to vote.
Okay, is that,
The expanded hours,
is it accessibility?
accessibility, yeah.
Okay.
And every last single neighborhood newsletter or whatever that spread is, we need to have the ability to know that voting is coming on. Number 2, I look up every person that is getting ready to run for office. I read their script in the on the net. How many people do that? They just exit. So we need, when a paper comes out, like a voting thing or something, beforehand, we need a letter or included in it that has all these blurbs as to what these people believe in.
But
So
it is
that
not a third party, because if somebody in this office is in charge of what information goes out to the voters, they're gonna skew the points to, like, you know?
it
So
has
more
to be exactly what's on the net.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Some more informational packets about, candidates. That's transparency. Oh, transparency actually came up yesterday too, actually. Okay, I'll write that.
Yeah, not transparent at all.
Yeah, it's
So did we miss anything? Do we want to add something else to here? I think we're at 5 though, so we have to think about where we
Commissioner
add
Coleman,
this.
infrastructure covers communication, collaboration, leadership,
Is everything like you wrote down for
accessibility. I think we've got a little bit, because we had city leadership change, we got that infrastructure we lumped in with communication.
Managed growth. That went up with managed growth.
And managing growth. Accommodations to vote, we've got development fees as part of the managing growth. Coordination with counties, communication, and transparency was the last one that we had.
Do we need to have bullets on change of administrative fees, the mayor and things like that? Do we need to have bullets?
That's part of what they're looking at, the aspect of the charter is whether we'll stay with a strong mayor or we go with a strong manager. Is one of the things that's kind of been buried because the mayor wants to have a strong mayor. And doing it, it's part and parcel of what.
Isn't there a limit on mayors that we should have?
Well, look at our state, look at our federal government. Our state says, we talked about the heat and everything else. Oh, used to be requirements for water breaks for the people that pick our fruits and vegetables. That was nixed. And do the smart farmers not produce, for, yeah, because they don't want to have people die
as I watch
but
those
it's
hearings.
because people don't, I mean, our last city vote had less than 13% of our people. This survey went out to every, so the department went out to 45,000 people, or at least you could argue 25 because of households. Went out for completing this survey, 75, that's less than half of 1%.
There was like
Of people responded.
I guess for visibility, I only found out about this meeting through someone handing out papers at the Apopka Fair. I never received any sort of
Yeah,
But it's a nice
So
little
that goes to that
postcard,
communication piece, right?
Yeah, which I would say if you're already attending like a local city fair and not going to Red Hot and Boom, that already assumes a certain level of community engagement.
Well, that's the communication is not, it's the biggest thing is just to make sure that hits with transparency. It hits all of it. It's just making sure people are aware of what's going on. There's sometimes just things that come up, and because Diane Velasquez is a neighbor of ours, I mean, I'll bump into Diane, well, are you going to this thing tonight? One thing tonight, you know, and it's kind of trickle down, and no matter what you do or how you do it, there's people going to pay attention or not. I know until I'm retired, I'm participating in government now because I never had the time, maybe you could argue we took the time. You know, I was working, I traveled, I was gone 3 to 4 nights a week, 3 kids, I coached all 3 in their sports. And so you're busy, you're engaged. And did I vote? Yes, every vote from the day I turned 21, I participated in. And then my son-in-law is one of the most vocal people. You know, he's on every media thing, he's just going on. It wasn't until about, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, he was part of my Frank's Pissing Morning complaining about what's going on. And I knew at this point, he's registered, but he never voted. I said, you need to go and do what he's voted every time since then, but it's just like, I called him up. I said, you know, well, you know, what does one
So I'm between, I'm gonna,
what does one vote mean? You know, I'm sorry, yeah, we're all.
no, it's okay. I want to kind of bring us back here to the topic. And I know I'm between you all and lunch, so I want to make sure I get you all out of here on time. So the priorities that kind of came out of your discussions, if we were to say the top 5, we talked about managed growth, and with that includes infrastructure, but also looking at the development fee. Communication and collaboration, that also includes coordinating with the county, and then leadership change, potentially reviewing the charter, accessibility, so that includes voting, communication, also informing residents so that they know who's on the ballot and the candidates, and then transparency. So I want to get, oh, do you have a question or do you have anything to add?
wanted to, like, know if I could add, like, a bullet under accessibility.
Sure.
Where it's also about, like, accessibility for participation.
Okay.
Because I know for a fact, like, I've called in to city meetings before, or not city, county meetings and stuff like that. Because, like, I wasn't able to go in person, but I signed up beforehand and I called the number and I waited on hold and I did the whole thing and I said my piece. If I could call, like, if I could call to the, like, showing up, obviously it's not going to be as impactful, but it's more accessible to people that are stuck surviving. Because they did that on purpose. You're forced to work and keep yourself and your family alive. And then when it's Thursday at 10 a.m., you can choose to go to work or you can be involved in local government.
So finding different ways for people to engage with the government, whether it's online or in person, but as kind of
So not like online, like on the phone.
on the phone. Okay.
With the people. Because like online is like, I give it to the boys and then like I have
So like two-way kind of communication.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just more accessible so that I don't have to come here physically. You know?
Okay. Understood. Thank you. So I wanted to speak a little bit about next steps so you understand how we will plan on using the information that you gave us today. So all the data that we're collecting as part of the interviews, the community forums will all be compiled into themes. So we're looking for things that are coming out of these meetings as well as these interviews that we're conducting. I will say from what we heard today, we also heard yesterday, so you all are very aligned as a community. You know what you want, you know where you're going. So that's usually a good sign, right? That means that you all have that shared vision for your community.
All 5 of these were mentioned?
I would say, yeah, so we had transparency came up, leadership came up, communication, and managed growth. So all 5 came up. And you were here last night too, right? Can you validate that? Yep, yep. So what we'll do is we'll update this environmental scan that will include this data as well. This will be shared with the council as well as senior leadership as we start to develop the strategic plan. So we'll have some plan development sessions with them, and then we'll create the draft plan. The draft plan will come back to you as a community to review. We want to make sure that we didn't miss anything from all the feedback that you all provided us. And before that draft plan is adopted, you will have a chance to also provide your feedback on that. And then finally, it will go for adoption by the city council around that December timeframe. So that's kind of where we are in the process.
On transparency, does that include, having serious talk about the budget?
So the
Because I don't
okay.
know if anybody's pilfering, if they're throwing money to the left when they should be throwing it down the center.
Well, they're definitely setting up a meeting.
So the question is, does transparency include discussing the budget? And yes, and that's the thing with the strategic plan. It isn't. Sorry, it's okay. It is intended to be a tool for driving decisions about the budget as well, so that you can kind of see how the objectives tie back to the budget, right? Based on the feedback that you all provide us.
Wow. And I'm concerned, sorry, this is.
No, it's okay. If we can stay in chat as well. I wanted for anyone who needed to, go out, I wanted to kind of give them that chance as well. But this is the last slide. Just saying to stay engaged, right? I understand that we didn't get the, turnout that we wanted to get, but again, this survey is still open till about end of September. So definitely share with your network. We want to make sure that we're getting as many voices as possible. The next session is happening at 1 this afternoon. So same thing, right? For anyone that was not able to attend this morning, they'll hear the same presentation at 1 p.m. today. Questions?
I'm just curious who scheduled this, like these 3 meetings within 20 hours.
So this was part of the project management team of the strategic planning project. So the Berry done in addition to the project management team internal to the city.
Oh, okay, so like they weren't involved, so the project manager.
So the project management team includes city staff members who are kind of essentially giving us direction on availability of the city.
Oh, okay, so, alright, I was wondering.
Okay. And then I will say as well, as I mentioned, there's still other opportunities as well, right? So when we have that draft plan review, that's another chance to kind of engage. Of course, the engagement tool being open till September as well.
How can we feel confident that our voices are actually being heard and our input is valued versus like, because this feels like an appeasement, like a breadcrumb of like, oh, you want to participate, show up at 10 a.m. on a Thursday and like talk to nobody. Not, you're not nobody, but like you work for nobody. Yeah. So like, I don't believe that anything posted online is going to be actually like understood, read, anything by, like it's.
Especially by the mayor, if we're having trouble with that, it's gonna be thrown away.
Yeah, and we'll provide that feedback as well to the city, right? Maybe see how we can provide other options for people to engage.
Does it always have to go through them? All of them?
The city council, the strategic plan.
Well, and with the mayor.
So yeah, so because they set the direction for your city, so they are, going to adopt the plan. But that's why we're giving you all the opportunity to provide feedback, right? So when you see the draft plan, if there's something that was missed, you can provide your input at that point.
Yeah, we can provide our input.
Yeah, no, I hear, frustration, right, coming in the room, and I think that just shows the passion that you all have for your community, right? So I totally understand that, and, we'll share that feedback and hopefully, get you all to a place where you want to be for your community as well. Yeah. No, thanks for being here. Of course, we'll stay over if you have any specific questions as well, but for anyone that has to go, you're also free to go, and thanks for being here.
What is your, I'm sorry I missed your position. Do you go to the different cities and?
Yeah, so I work with different cities across the United States with strategic planning. So most recently we work with City of Homestead. They're down in the Miami area.
Now, what made you wind up here at a tiny little town like?
So yeah, the city. So we went through a competitive process. So we got an RFP. They got an RFP for responding to the proposal, and they selected us for this process.
And us is very done.
Us as very young.
Okay. And very done is like a tax and accounting firm.
Yeah, or
that
tax, yeah.
Also
sound like a Midwesterner.
Really? I've never heard that before.
No?
No, not your
No.
voice.
No, that's interesting.
Definitely
No.
not South Southern.
No, since I live in the Boston area, I didn't know.
That makes sense.
You say you're from St. Paul, is that where you're from?
Well, I'm a little bit everywhere. I call Wisconsin home, but with my work in healthcare, move around. Went to Michigan State University, started with Berkeley University for a number of years, and then through softball, got into healthcare. One of our ball players was a civil engineer for the state of Michigan that approved nursing homes, hospitals, so on and so forth. He said, you'd be ideal for this position with this long-term care company. And we had 26 facilities in Michigan, and lived there, and then I was there, and then we sold to what was Beverly Enterprises, now it's called Golden Living, which is the largest healthcare corporation in the world at the time. And we moved to, they created a new division and moved to Minneapolis. And then things changed with companies, and then I worked for a subacute rehab company called Continental Medical Systems. Started in HR and went into operations, and when I finished my career, I was running 60 assisted living facilities in three states.
See, so like, how could you even participate in something like this when you were doing all that?
And that's part of it. And then when I was home, I was coaching. My three kids all play travel soccer. I coached them through soccer that I never played. I became a Division I college referee for 9 years. So you follow your kids, and next thing, what do you mean you're officiating Division I soccer? I had Florida, had Georgia, had Michigan, Michigan State, Indiana, Notre Dame, Purdue, you name it, across the globe. So many things happen.
You must have done a lot of studying and a lot of watching
A lot of traveling too.
Well, it's
to produce all of that
You're working
ability.
hard for real.
yeah. Well, and again,
Stats.
now I harass the people up here and
Keep it going.
the county. As I serve in the transplant committee. Actually, we had a meeting at 3 and at 6 today with transportation and mobility advisory committee for the county we created in January. And
Okay, I love that.
Is there anybody on the commission that is forward thinking?
and this is strictly my opinion. I think they all are to a degree. In my opinion, Nick Testa is the most. And when I first met Nick, I was not a fan, but he and I worked on some projects for our homeowner association. And you get to know the man. He's bright, he's articulate, he's not afraid to ask questions.
Yes, that's what I love.
He's respectful. Diane falls in that avenue too, but I think she's been kind of, in my opinion, she's kind of been misled, moved in direction. She killed the forensic audit that we needed to have. I mean, we move money as a city every meeting because the budget process, in my opinion, stinks. I mean, I've done budgeting for my career 47 years, and I always had 5 years side by side, year to date, year to date, annualized. It's right in front of you. These commissioners.
Get wasted if you
They
keep
get
changing.
5 different years. They get them only because I requested it. So they get 5 separate years, but there's different years. We change your account we move it over here, we change your account, move it there. If you don't see it side by side, you can't track it. So they're lost. And doing it. So this is a strong mayor. I mean, there's meetings that come up, and if you watch the meetings and you look at it, you'll sit there, the mayor comes up with something that seems to be out of the blue. You see Nick and Diane go, holy hell, where did this come from? And Smith and Diane know it because he's full, in my opinion. Smith once in the last 5 years has voted against what the mayor, had a different opinion than the mayor. Nadia has never. And if you watch that, it doesn't mean anything, this is my observations, I come to every meeting, it's really sad that you have that. And budget process, every meeting, they're moving money, and they're moving money because they failed to budget properly. In 47 years of budgeting for me, the only time we had an exception or moved money around was one, we got storm or damage to a property that you have to make an adjustment to the budget. Every meeting, they're moving money because they didn't budget properly.
I looked through, I tried printing out the budget, it corrupted on my printer. Weird, but, I tried looking at it because I can see, I can process it better in paper. There was so much money for police and like new police uniforms and like police shoes and like canine healthcare and like new, less than lethal weapons.
Well, there's, I mean, we, with
Oh,
our,
I'll give this to people.
Yeah. There's more there as well.
I'll give it to strangers.
like anything, it's not perfect, but our police and fire department are top rated. And the number of cities in this state or in the country that are top rated are few and far between. And having proper equipment, having proper radios, having all the things that they need in order to do the job properly is important. We are 6 new officers, means 6 new uniforms, 6 more vests, vests are a couple $1,000 each.
Yeah, exactly.
It means weapons, it means they each get a vehicle. Is it necessary? Yes, we're 36 square miles. We're the